Welcome everyone to our 8th webinar. And we're really excited to say that this is our 8th week doing Webinar Wednesday. So thank you for joining us today. And today we're going to be defining the new normal and what does my business look like. So thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, I want to introduce our wonderful moderator, Juanita Sepulveda with Tree Shaker Podcast. So without further ado, welcome Juanita. She's going to introduce our panelists today.
Mari, it's always a pleasure being able to moderate these Wednesday webinars. Again, as Mari stated, today is defining the new normal. What does my business look like? We have some amazing speakers today because it's on a topic that it has really caused us to really change due to COVID-19. Now we're going to have two versions. The first version is going to be English, and that is going to be Deidre Patello. And she is a very, very educated woman, very, very knowledgeable on what she's going to present. But before we move forward, Mari, can you please tell us what the Maestro Center is doing, seeing that May 1st, they launched Buy Local and Grow SA? You're mute. You're on mute.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Here I am. No, thank you. We're really excited. We launched this website May 1st. It was a soft launch. So we're really excited to bring to our small business community that this is a resource page, a one-stop shop for small businesses. So if you have a business, please make sure you register. Here in the right corner, we have the QR code. So if you turn on your camera and scan the QR code, it'll take you directly to the website so that you can register your business. But also you can register through the link that is mentioned below right here, or just by visiting maestrocenter.org. You're going to be able to access that information, and we would love to see every single one of you register to that page. So go ahead and take a time to do it right after our webinar.
But before we even get started, why don't we recognize the people who have made it possible for us to be able to continue? Every great idea, every great opportunity comes with great supporters and great sponsors. One of our biggest sponsors is HEB, BBVA, Wells Fargo, and VIA. Now, we know that sponsorships take on great responsibility, but as well as our supporters, because you're looking at the West Side Development Corporation, you got the Hispanic Contractors Association, the North San Antonio Chamber, the West Chamber, the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber, the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, and then of course, our business developers, which is the Small Business Development Center. You're talking about the Texas Gulf Coast Network, and you also have the Small Business Development here locally in San Antonio. But you're not here to listen on what I have to say. We want to hear that expert. We want to talk to Deidre Patello, who is from UTSA, especially on how, she's from SBDC, trying to educate us on how COVID-19's business and how to recover during this time. So no further ado, let me introduce Deidre Patello.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to be here representing the UTSA SBDC COVID Business Recovery Accelerator. As you can see from the map of Texas on your screen, the dark shaded blue portion represents the UTSA Institute for Economic Development Center Southwest Texas Border Network coverage area. And we say we cover the largest geographic region of Texas, from El Paso all the way down to Brownsville, from the Big Bend over to Victoria. We cover 79 counties, so that is the largest geographic region of Texas. We are not actually the largest demographic region of Texas. That is the University of Houston Gulf Coast SBDC network. They have about, I think about half or maybe slightly less than half of the counties that we serve. But if you know West Texas much, there's some counties out there that have more goats and tumbleweeds than they have people. But we do serve a very large community The entire Texas, Mexico border region is within our service area. So we're really glad to be here today, representing all of our fine lead centers and all of the resources of the UTSA Institute for Economic Development as well. So I am really honored to be a part of this event. We started very early. Actually, our first requests for assistance to small businesses came in at the end of February. Even when some of our business clients were experiencing issues with import-export, and as soon as they started also experiencing issues with business downturn and possibly impacts on their workforce, we started motivating immediately to find out the best resources to provide to small business owners in all the communities that we serve. As of April 15th, we actually stood up the COVID Business Recovery Accelerator specifically, and the websites that we're going to review with you today, the website and information we're going to review with you today. And so I think that Madi is going to share those, so you might take a moment to make a note of those, but we'll also be happy to send those out to you. When I go to, I'll give you just a moment while I just share a couple other things. My colleague Jaime Martinez is with me today also. He's the Senior Project Manager for the Business Recovery Center. And Jaime will also be available to chime in during this session. And then I will be supporting him with information when he presents in Spanish. So again, we're really glad to be here. And the specific resources we're going to be looking at today is our overall website, which is txsbdc.org/business recovery. I hope that's very easy for folks to remember and bookmark, and feel free to use it and share that information around. Our goal is to be a very simple and direct resource to get to all of the many resources that we know that you have seen. I think we've probably all been sort of drinking from the fire hose of resources that have come at us, news that we have seen. We've tried to simplify that with the idea that this is not every single resource, but it's a great way to shape the questions that you might have in requesting further resources from us. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if I can get started on that.
Just want to touch bases as our listeners take the opportunity. Now this information that we're sharing, Deidre, you are absolutely correct. We have touched on this numerous times, listeners. However, with the changing on a daily basis, you know, regulations, requirements, information gets updated. So what we want to do is make sure that we circle around, as Deidre is going to touch on, some vital information that may affect you and may not affect you. But again, we want those subject matter experts to be able to touch. Deidre, thank you for mentioning Jaime Martinez. He will be assisting Deidre during this presentation, but we have the honor of actually having him also as he does the Spanish version. But again, thank you again, and with no further ado, I'll let you continue.
Thanks so much. And thanks, Jenny, for bringing that up, because Juanita, I'm sorry. I decided to give you a nickname on the fly. Thank you for bringing that up, because I want to be sure that I'm, addressing kind of the big picture topics of what is certainly affecting your workplace, what has been affecting your workplace, and what might help shape and will certainly be impacting your new normal, what will be the reality for your workplace going forward. So I'm going to try to draw those, to draw some lines between the ways that you might have been engaging in certain HR practices, what you need to understand about some of the processes that you're engaged in if you're utilizing any of the SBA funding, how those interact with the CARES Act, and with just your general responsibilities as an employer and your novel responsibilities, especially with topics such as unemployment claims. And so as we look at the website, our website now, what I'm looking to share with you and help you navigate is some fairly direct links to resources, one of which I'd like to draw your attention to is our phone number, 210-458-2272. That is the way to access assistance from all of the staff at the COVID Business Recovery Accelerator, or if you need to get a message directly to Jaime or myself, that's a great way to reach us. Also by our email at businessrecovery@utsa.edu. And I just would certainly encourage you all to bookmark this website. Our goal is to make sure that it's kind of a one-stop of key information, but it's not the full stop. In other words, we want you to look here for information to help shape the questions that we can help you customize answers to. So we are absolutely here to help. We're here to be the bridge to all the great partners that are on here today, and we hope we'll all keep this virtuous cycle of assistance going. And by this, maybe, you know, if this is the only way you know to reach out to any of the folks you see today, that's great. We'll keep it moving. So if you think about this research as your one-stop, you can find an overview of funding opportunities, both from the SBA and other funding sources, including many local resources that are specific to Texas, and reaching out to some of our other centers throughout the region that I noted that we serve, because if, say, you're in Austin, there maybe are some specific grants that are available for the Austin community. Our friends down in Corpus know about some specific activity that is going on locally to support small businesses, especially in the rural areas. So reach out to us. We want to help you find the best resource to support your new normal in terms of funding. But what I'm really here to talk about today, as Juanita mentioned, that, you know, I'm a subject matter expert in HR. That's the hat that I wear. I will provide the caveat that I'm not an attorney and I do not play one on television, but I do try to stay as up to date as possible on the legal ramifications of various HR regulatory understandings and you know, the impact on you as an employer, and some of the best resources to help you develop effective workforce policies. To that end, we have collected information here on our employer resources page to help you navigate the key regulatory issues that are impacting folks during this recovery period. This is not all. The Fair Labor Standards Act, for example, remains in effect. Department of Labor still has activity other than FFCRA that it's engaged in. But these are the acts that I think people are looking at right now to help them determine how to best make decisions about their workforce and what that looks like in the new normal. So when I was thinking about how the Paycheck Protection Program and aiming toward forgiveness affects small business employers, I looked at what are the sites that are giving me answers, or at least giving me answers to date on what plans employers should make for their workforce. So I think it's a good idea to look at kind of that overarching loan forgiveness guideline directly from the SBA. And so that is right here on loan details and forgiveness. So kind of that high level overview, I'm sure that we've all heard, is that goal of keeping at least 75% of expenses that we utilize from PPP funds focused directly on compensation to the employee. I think that keeping that in mind at this point is still a very good idea. Jaime and I have been talking about just the changing you know, environment of these guidelines since we first started talking about this, you know, back in April. And we feel that the best recommendation we can make for any employer is to act now with due diligence on the best information available, and maybe focus on the most restrictive definitions in order to optimize potential forgiveness. And so if we keep looking at our activity related to utilizing PPP funds based on that 75%, at this point, we know that's the most restrictive guidance. There are proposals and efforts on the part of lawmakers to maybe adjust that, because they're getting feedback that many employers are having a hard time bringing back workers, and therefore meeting that 75% might be a very big challenge. And we know that this act was initialized with the idea of maximizing that forgiveness of the loan. So with that in mind, we recommend at this point, if you act on that most restrictive definition of maintaining 75% expenses on direct compensation, then you have the greatest chance of receiving forgiveness. So that's kind of a step one when I think about what does the new normal look like? Well, maximizing employee retention.
Now, Deidre,
Nina?
now, and you're so right, you know, you have to act on what's current, and thank you for pointing that out. Now, let's say that hypothetically, we know there's, there's a potential or that it changes. What, and I know that I've always been taught, especially when we're talking about with SBDC here in San Antonio, I was always told documentations, do your receipts, do, keeping basically an audit trail, to document to if and when, or should it ever happen that you get audited, you have those documents supporting, those transactions at the time that it was, that you executed it. Is that something that you should go back to maybe another, anything else within that kind of gives you those guidelines?
That's a great question. And as a matter of fact, is my screen still sharing?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, let's find out where it went. There it went. Okay. And so if we go back to the main employer resources page, I have included the FAQs for the PPP from both SBA and from the Treasury Department. And the reason I've chosen to include them, but they currently match, but sometimes one agency is getting approval to do their update apparently before the other agency is. So I've made sure I'm linking to them both, just so everyone will have maximized their information. And I'm going to go right now to the SBA's FAQ, because I think it gives a great example. Within the FAQs, there's some specific examples that, as I think about, it's interesting that we are talking about the new normal, because I do think that sometimes some business owners are becoming aware of ways that they can actually improve their processes and their record-keeping guidelines. And I think in particular, SBA FAQ number 40 gives a very specific example of an action a business owner can take that will both help them be more, I would say from an HR standpoint, more compliant with good HR record keeping processes, and also create effective defense in the case of offering someone a position and receiving a refusal and having that affect the potential forgiveness of the PPP. So the example here in FAQ, for example, is written job offers. As an HR professional, I have always recommended written job offers. Sometimes I'm thinking some of these things are happening that are giving me a wonderful opportunity to jump on my soapbox for great record keeping and good HR business practices. I would always recommend written job offers. It's something you certainly can always do, and there are great reasons to do it. I would say even in what I call the before times, I recommend written job offers to create a consistent and professional communication with your candidate, to track any necessary contingencies. For example, if you need to make a contingent offer of employment based upon the need for a background check, etc. It creates a consistent process both for the employee to understand what their responsibilities are and for the employer to verify that their process has been followed. In this case, FAQ 40 is giving us direction on the rehire process and how we maximize forgiveness if, for example, we are counting on a certain number of employees to return to us and we find that we are not able to maintain that workforce at the level that we wish to maintain it at. It's very important, I think, throughout this that employers look back at the records that they utilize to request the PPP in the first place. And so throughout the FAQs, and in the early part of the FAQs, I'm sure that you all have talked about this before, how people even qualified for the PPP. So the records that folks gathered in order to qualify should help to guide them in maintaining their records moving forward and help them to think about how to enhance that documentation, both as the potential for what may be a fairly narrative process of requesting forgiveness. And what I mean by that is we don't have one definitive process for requesting forgiveness. At this point, when you look at either the SBA or the FAQ on forgiveness, you'll note that the forgiveness will be requested from the lender directly. Lenders are certainly asking for better guidance on how they manage the forgiveness process, but at the same time, with FAQs like this, and this one was added, if I remember correctly, it was May 5th. So that was a good ways into the process. That was over 3 weeks into the request process for PPP. When you are given directions such as this, that clearly will be more than simply, a tick mark on a checklist of whether or not you met the standards for forgiveness. It's actually gathering evidence of the workforce retention process. Well, I would say other types of evidence on workforce retention, rehire, or even new hire in order to maintain that full-time equivalency is going to be a really important process. We don't have definitive guidance on it right now, but again, if we're looking at our new normal being based on the most restrictive interpretation of the guidelines we have at the moment, then I would say, as an HR professional, I need to look at the positions and the workforce, the total workforce and compensation projections that I made at the time of requesting this, and how do I maintain, retain, or rehire and new hire all of those positions. So gathering that kind of information, perhaps enhancing job descriptions when positions have changed, because the reality is suitable work today might look different than suitable work looked in January. There is certainly an increased need for sanitation, safety guidelines, both enhancing and enforcing, safety guidelines, PPE, et cetera, that might not have been in previous job descriptions that we would expect in the job descriptions moving forward.
That definitely covers the topic, because I know that it's a question that I'm sure is probably been lingering for some of our small business owners, as well as for the employees as well. But thank you very much for answering that.
Thank you. So I'm gonna kind of tie that into the next area that we provided resources on, and that is, if there are any other questions about paycheck protection and what that looks like in your workforce moving forward, feel free to let Juanita know, and we will, certainly address that. But I kind of want to move along. I just want you to know we have these PPP resources available. We're happy to help you research the best answer. And just, you probably have heard, there's definitely quite the hue and cry amongst everyone from, attorneys, accountants, associations, and lawmakers. I think there's pretty much bipartisan support to try to establish a more definitive guideline for forgiveness. So we all hope that that's forthcoming soon. But in the meantime, we need to be able to act now. So as we look at making sure that our workforce fulfills the needs of supporting and sustaining our business, as well as meeting the highest level of opportunity that we have for loan forgiveness from the PPP, or taking advantage of other resources, such as the elements of the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. So the choices that we've made about resources here are, I have maintained a link to the very first news brief that the Treasury Department put out on the FFCRA, because I think it does such a great kind of high-level overview of the key elements of opportunities to employers. And that is taking advantage of perhaps some paid sick leave, what that coverage looks like, the return of funds, what the small business protection is for our business owners with fewer than 50 employees. The delay, there was a 30-day delay in actually enforcing that act. We're well past that 30-day delay, but it provides just a great overview, because I think that some people have just heard paid sick leave and been concerned that they might be obligated to a process that they have not been prepared for, especially if they're a very small business. And I think that this does a really good job of just providing an overview of what the opportunity is, while also setting guidelines for understanding what an individual company's regulatory obligation is and their opportunity for requesting relief from an obligation that might be a burden on them. So that's just the overview, and I think it's valuable to look at. I've also provided a link to the IRS more detailed guidance on the tax credit opportunities. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat that as an accountant, I make a great HR consultant. I in no way, shape, or form claim to be an accounting professional. And I do strongly encourage all business owners to seek assistance from a professional in tax preparation if they take advantage of any of these opportunities. And we at the SBDC will definitely be looking at more guidance that we can share. I will tell you also that the IRS and the SBA have recognized that some of their directives are not necessarily coinciding. I don't want to say they disagree, but the IRS, every federal agency, of course, is responsible for assessing and asserting its understanding of its own guidance responsibilities. So the IRS has looked at the CARES Act and said, given all other IRS laws and guidance, this is what we understand that we are going to enforce in relationship to taking advantage of some of these programs. And the SBA has said, wait, we were told within the act that this is the guidance. That could probably be a whole day's worth of detail on those individual taxes. So what I would once again want to recommend to small business owners is that they look at their own understanding at the current date and exercise due diligence in meeting that requirement. And I want to call out an interesting point that when you look at the IRS guidelines, there is something that I have not previously seen in other directives and other disasters, and that is, as you look at some of the details, they will note that to date, and I'm trying to find the right one, to date, some of the interpretations have not been codified, and so that whatever action you take on this date is your understanding as of this date, and it may not be used at a later date in court. So I think that's a really important point to note. I noticed that they have just updated today. It looks like they are starting to put some, there had been some more of those qualifiers up till yesterday on some of these guidance forms. But you also notice there's a whole lot of guidance here. So I do encourage business owners to look for professional assistance when they take advantage of some of those credits. What I would like to address that I think affects the new normal for most business owners that we know of with fewer than 50 employees is what their specific obligation is. So let me tell you actually what the obligation for every employer with fewer than 500 employees, but more than one or more, from 1 to 499, every employer is a subject employer to the FFCRA. So being a subject employer means you need to provide the required notice. And this is the required notice. So we have the direct link to the notice that should be provided to any employee who has been employed by you from April 1st through December 31st of 2020. So that is the applicable range to subject employers. A subject employer, again, is any employer with fewer than 500, so 499 all the way down to 1 employee. So what that means is you must provide this notice to all employees employed by you from April 1st through December 31st. Even if they're only employed by you from April 1st to April 2nd, technically, you should have provided this notice, or if it were requested, you would need to engage in the interactive process. Now to address, again, what I said is I think the new normal for most small businesses, those with fewer than 50 employees, Department of Labor has done, I think, a great and detailed job of outlining their FAQs, and I'm going to skip down to the one that I'm most often asked to clarify, and that's FAQ number 40. So I think a lot of business owners initially heard, well, if I have fewer than 50 employees, you know, I'm exempt from the FFCRA, and that's somewhat inaccurate in that you're still subject, but you may request a small business exemption if the provision of the paid sick leave would jeopardize the viability of your business. And so that's very, very specific. So let me tell you real quick about the ways the act would be investigated and enforced. This is a complaint-based act. So the Department of Labor has not designated any investigators specifically to go out. They're not doing random audits like other Department of Labor audits are performed. They are not going and knocking on doors. It is a complaint-based investigation. So if an employee were to request leave and job protection under the FFCRA, the employer, no matter, as long as you're between 1 and 499 employees, must engage in the interactive process to determine their eligibility to provide the leave. If you have fewer than 50 employees, and you do not typically provide any type of paid leave, and the provision of leave would require you to decrease your workforce, not be able to operate effectively, then it would be reasonable to assert that providing that leave would jeopardize the viability of your business. But it's an activity that the employer must engage in. They are subject. The exemption doesn't get filed anywhere. It would be simply if you were investigated, you would need to provide documentation, as Juanita pointed out earlier, that you had engaged in the interactive process and determined that you were ineligible, unable to provide that leave and still function effectively. And so that's another great example of the documentation. So hopefully we've all had, you know, great documentation about the communications with our workforce. Interestingly, I think that a lot of us probably have some records that we haven't had before now that we're communicating more remotely. Maybe we have emails, maybe we have texts. Make sure if you are having communication about any elements of your employees' work activities, offers of work activities, leave activities, requests for leave, all of those things. If you're having those conversations in text, make sure that you're saving them, do those screen captures, do whatever you have to do to provide that documentation. But that's what will help you protect the remainder of your workforce if you are not able to provide leave to workers in this case. So an interesting point, I had a conversation with someone else, another business owner the other day, and we were kind of talking about what are the differences and the interactions between all of these acts. So if you would think about the Paycheck Protection Program, it's an economic stimulus program. It's a paycheck protection. So it is designed to keep those funds circulating in our economy through our payroll process. The FFCRA is a job protection act. In other words, it is for the benefit of employers to take advantage of if they can receive funding to offer leave to employees, but it is a job protection for the individual, that the employees have both the opportunity and the responsibility to engage in the interactive process over. And then finally, we have the Texas Workforce Commission guidelines, our unemployment insurance process. And if you think about TWC as being responsible for income protection to our citizens, I think that maybe that, I hope that kind of clarifies the difference between the acts. Some of them have interaction. You noted that I talked about FAQ number 40 under the Paycheck Protection Plan, providing guidance that employers who offer positions to employees who either cannot or choose not to return to the workplace, there's a process by which they can receive, continue to receive their maximum forgiveness as long as they've engaged in a consistent process. Well, the Texas Workforce Commission has just established a brand new process that might be another step in that documentation for the employer, and it is also, I think, a clarification and enhancement of understanding to both unemployment insurance applicants and to employers on how they communicate with TWC on eligibility for benefits. And that is this employer work refusal documentation. So I put this up top because it's a brand new process, and I think it's really important to talk about. Prior to the development of this particular process, the only way an employer could inform the Texas Workforce Commission that an employee who had made a claim, and while that employer was receiving chargeback protection for that claim, that employee was still of record on that employer's account. The only way that an employer could notify the Texas Workforce Commission is if they had made a mass claim. So they would have had to participate in the process with contacting TWC about 10 or more employees who were being furloughed or laid off, or they would have to have used what was called the fraud process. Well, I had many employers contact me to say, this employee isn't committing fraud, they just can't come back to work because their health is at risk, or somebody in their household's house is at risk, or they don't have childcare due to the COVID issue and schools being closed. So there are a lot of novel qualifying grounds for continuing to be unable to take advantage of suitable work. And so this new process actually helps employers manage effective communication with TWC while not having to adjudicate the reason that the employee is unable. So in this case, there are multiple ways that the employer can share with TWC that the reason that that worker is not able to participate at the same time. It seems to me, and I'm still asking for verification of how the communication comes back to the employer, but it seems to me that this will be another step in the documentation that the employer will have, that they engaged in the appropriate interactive and job offer process in order to defend any PDP or other types of claims, and also to maintain effective records on how they worked at retaining their workforce. So I think this is a great step that TWC has made. And TWC overall, I think, has just been out the gate making a great effort in providing the most up-to-date and important information to employers to understand what both their responsibilities are and their opportunities are in utilizing the resources of TWC, in protecting themselves against chargeback claims when in the various ways in which this pandemic has impacted their workforce. So whether, as happened very early in March for some of my clients, they experienced business downturns that necessitated layoffs, furloughs, or possibly even, temporary and now sustained closure of their business, whether it were things like the stay safe orders that might have caused them not to be able to bring their workforce in. There's a lot of different reasons that employers may have had work separations, and TWC has done just a great job of providing, constantly. When they first started this particular page, I want to say you only had to scroll down about this far. As you can see now, there is a lot of information on this page. They've provided great detail, including even a visual of the time frame that workers are eligible for benefits. Detailed links on how employers can get information on, for example, there was an extension of the first quarter tax reports and payment process. So just tons and tons of information for employers on their interactions with the Texas Workforce Commission. The other elements I wanted to point out in particular from TWC, the image I showed you of there's the filing, there's the time frame for eligibility for benefits, and here's also an image on how the various benefits are available, including to that non-traditional applicant. And I think that that's one of the things that the Texas Workforce Commission just jumped on right away to make sure that some small business owners who would be sole proprietors, independent contractors, that self-employed contractor gig worker, how they could see how they could access the resources during this time that have been set aside for them, specifically for pandemic unemployment assistance. TWC has continued to evolve their processes to make sure that they're more accessible, including giving very specific guidelines to those sole proprietors, those non-traditional applicants, for how they can take advantage of these resources. And I'm not in the business of, I'm not paid by TWC as a PR person, but I would like to make that connection and show how, once again, one of our, we have a great resource here in the state of Texas. I have seen time and time again that TWC has been reaching out to try to make sure business owners can communicate effectively how the process is affecting them, and also get information on how they can take advantage of protections such as the chargeback protection, understanding what the benefits to their employees will be, because I do think that a lot of employers, they're asking me questions where they are very concerned if they have not received any type of funding that would allow them to bring their workforce back in. They want to make sure that those employees who've been loyal to them, that they're loyal to them, and that they're getting support and able to still function in our communities.
I agree with you, Deidre. I think they've done an excellent job, not just supporting the small business owner, but also shedding some information and guiding some of the employees where, and I'm thinking, this is the time that the employee and the employer are able to really collaborate to where they're able to find, as you've been, emphasizing, their new normal and to return. But I also noticed that there's guidelines, because unfortunately, as I was noticing on the employer work refusal documentation, it has certain criteria that you're able to, from an employer's perspective, support the employee, because their first interest is making sure that the safety of their employee, so that the business functioned correctly. And I saw, childcare, and that's definitely forward thinking. So thank you for pointing that out.
And I think that that's definitely a consideration in the new normal. From an HR standpoint, I always tell business owners, your responsibility is to make an objective job offer to an individual, no matter their circumstances. We are now in the new normal. We are having to have much better communication and interaction on what an individual's circumstances are, because those are now being affected by challenges and impacts beyond that individual's control. So you'll notice, I'm sure you've probably heard before, that in the before times, an unemployment claim was not supportable because of the absence of childcare, because the Texas Workforce Commission does, of course, offer some support to certain individuals to help them receive childcare. But now the issue is that the childcare may not even be available in the community. Schools are closed, Absolutely. Other childcare facilities might not be available. persons in the family or neighborhood, et cetera, persons who might otherwise have provided childcare may be ill, may be vulnerable. So there's so many more factors that are outside of any individual's control. That is why TWC has adjusted the eligibility for benefits based on childcare. But ultimately, what it all comes down to is the physical safety of everyone.
Absolutely.
And that is why we have also made sure that we've included some great safety resources. And once again, you know, this is me being a proud Texan. I think Texas has just been a leader, and our Department of State Health Services provides incredible resources on returning to the workplace, managing some effective health protocols, and providing detailed business information to businesses and, you know, employers specifically, and information that they can hand down to their employees. You know, any employer's #1 responsibility in the workplace is always the physical safety of the human beings in that workplace. Now, they have a specific regulatory requirement for safety that comes from OSHA. It's the 29 CFR. So if you have even one employee, your most basic responsibility is to ensure the physical safety of that worker in their workplace activities, and at a minimum, tell them what to do in case of a fire. That's the very bare minimum of the OSHA 29 CFR guideline. But beyond that, there are additional responsibilities, maybe based on the NAICS code, the industry you participate in, the specific activities, the equipment an individual utilizes, the supplies they utilize. The great thing about all of these resources is they are continuing to evolve and be enhanced. And I think we all have some great opportunities to shape our new normal utilizing all these resources from the Texas Department of State Health Services, from OSHA,
Great.
from the CDC, and even from the Texas Department of Insurance. The Texas Department of Insurance continues to offer resources for not only for, you know, their #1 job, of course, is to ensure that the consumer of insurance products in the state of Texas is protected. Well, not only do they do that from the standpoint of the codicils in the insurance riders and things like that, they don't just help business owners interpret those. They want to make sure that they have a complete risk management process. So there is safety training available from the Texas Department of Insurance Workplace Safety Group. It looks as though they will be in the future reinstating their in-person training, but I think that they're also working on more virtual training as well. So there are so many great resources. We could have a whole afternoon I'm happy to do that one day if you'd like, or we have some other safety professionals. All of these resources can help as you define the new normal, determine both what your responsibilities are from a regulatory standpoint, of course, and some definitive guidelines on how to do that. I'm just going to touch on the Department of State Health Services, their COVID-19 page with the minimum health protocols. And these are just, for example, protocols for restaurants. So this detailed list, you know, it's a great checklist that any restaurant owner could go through to maximize their highest responsibility. Let's see. Are you able to see this PDF at this time, Juanita? Okay,
yes.
Great.
Yes, it's visible. It's
okay,
visible.
Wonderful. So just you know, this is a specific checklist for the business owner to be able to utilize. So that's just one of the many great resources that are available from the Department of State Health Services, just for example.
Right.
And then finally, we also have cybersecurity resources. And I think when we talk about the safety of our workforce, you know, physical safety is absolutely always the first. Once you know that everyone who is encountering your workers, all human beings who are being encountered, are safe, then you also need to look at what are some of the other steps for business safety. And cybersecurity, we know, is one of the bigger risks that many of our business owners face. And so we have some great training here. You can review the training itself or watch the video, and we maintain alerts on key cyber risks that some small business owners are experiencing as well. So with that, I'm sorry,
So going back to your,
sharing.
Let's go back to your PowerPoint, Deidre, because I know you've got a lot of great links and examples on how you can, how we can provide to our audience.
Thank you. And Madi, can you put that back up? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what I'm sharing right now. I'm having all these pop-ups on my, I'm realizing some of my own technical limitations today.
You know what, and that's okay.
It does not let me until you stop sharing your screen.
Thank you, okay.
And I have already received some emails requesting the recording, so I'll make sure to respond. If you want the recording and the presentation, please email me at mari@maestrocenter.org, and I'll make sure to send it your way as well. So let me pull it up. Here you go. Was this the one that you were looking for, Deidre?
Juanita, is that the page that you would like us to share?
Yes. So as we go, can you move forward, Madi? I know that Deidre was showing us the link where she had the opportunity, because we want to make sure that we were able to show everyone the link on where they can go to it. Deidre has done a phenomenal job to being able to provide us examples, frequently asked questions, and I know I do have one right now. So let me go back and touch on one of the questions. Though you touched on it and we talked about documentation, Deidre, one of the questions from our audience is, are we able to wait? Let me go back to the question. It goes, are we able to wait to notify the employee 1 to 2 weeks until work comes in because the work is not available, or is in case that, you know, we're having to wait for work to come in? Or should we notify them now, you know, for them to come back, even though there's no work?
So if the question is regarding in relationship to PPP forgiveness, please remember, you know, you have an 8-week clock for forgiveness, and depending upon when you received the PPP funds, if it was in the first round, we know that everyone is looking at that June 30th suspense date. So people are concerned, you know, are they going to be able to spend their funds appropriately, you know, in that time frame? There is no requirement in the PPP that work has to be accomplished to receive the paycheck. So remember those definitions I was telling you again. The PPP is a paycheck protection program. As long as you utilize your funds in the currently designated fashion, you optimize your opportunity for forgiveness. I am not in the business of telling anyone exactly how to operate their business. I'm not telling you that, that you have to have appreciable work in order to pay people, but I'm also telling you that there's no requirement that you have appreciable work in order to pay people. You have many options for how you expend those funds. There are businesses that are able to function and have work, and therefore they're able to maximize these funds so that they have income coming in, while technically they already have the payroll resources to pay for that income. So that income will be direct income without it having to be having compensation deducted from it, because that compensation is being otherwise covered. I'm sorry,
go ahead. So maybe the question is, you know, could they wait 1 to 2 weeks before notifying the employee to return Is that something that can be done to safeguard them in preparing, or could you utilize the employee in preparing the business to reopen, meaning safety?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, there is no requirement that the paycheck be provided for the role that it was previously provided for. The compensation rates need to maintain some stability. One of the requirements is that you cannot receive forgiveness, or it may be deducted if you decrease compensation by more than 25%. And then, of course, there's another concomitant issue with the Texas Workforce Commission, because, of course, TWC guidelines say that an employee has good cause to quit if you reduce their wages by 20% or more. So, wage deduction is an issue, but pay for alternate work is not an issue. You could pay people to engage in training. You could pay people to engage in the deep cleaning of your business. You could pay people to take care of themselves and be prepared to return to the workforce. So you could utilize that pay for a variety of reasons. I think that question probably has a lot of different answers from different viewpoints and different both opportunities and regulatory responsibilities.
And maybe this is one of those questions that may need to be reevaluated and have that discussion with that subject matter expert, such as the CPA, or whoever does their taxes, or whoever does the business analysis, or even the business plan as far as the labor.
Absolutely. We'd be happy to if there's more in depth, and if it is related to the PPP, I think we can dig into it a lot more and see what those opportunities are.
Marty,
and to mention, yes, next week we're having a professional CPA come to our session to talk more in depth on that topic, but also to discuss various different topics like managing cash flow and how to make the most out of the funds you currently have. So that's something that you should be keeping in the lookout, because we're trying to bring the professionals to guide you as well.
Deidre, thank you so much. You brought in a wealth of knowledge. We really value it, especially to our entrepreneurs. And I'm sure there's probably employees listening to this, but the fact that you shed light on the fact that TWC is not just looking at the employer, but the employee. Speaking of employers and employees, Marty, who do we have from HEB? Because I know we always have an opportunity to be able to bring back Ms. Crystal Royal. So could you tell us a little bit about what Ms. Crystal Royal has to offer for us, ma'am?
Yes, so we're really lucky and fortunate to have HEB as a partner, and they're right now accepting more applications for you to be able to work with HEB. So we're supporting local, and we want to make sure we can't stress this enough, because HEB is looking to work directly with you. So Ms. Crystal Royal, if you can please explain what you have going on here and how you're helping our community.
Well, I want to first say thank you, Deidre. You gave, oh my God, amazing information. I commend you on everything that you just shared today. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your expertise. To the small business land out there, please go listen to this recording. I think there was pertinent information on there for you as an employer and as also employees. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Quest for Texas Best. A lot of people don't know, a lot of people do know, but they don't know that we've extended the deadline to May 31st. The point of Quest for Texas Best is to find the best in Texas of non-foods and foods, and have them premiered and showcased in our stores. So please go to the website, www.heb.com/quest. I'm going to repeat that again, www.heb.com/quest. You have 30 till the 31st at 4:59 p.m. I'm going to repeat that. 4:59 p.m. Not 5, not 5:01. 4:59 is when we close that portal. And we look for, we are monitoring that portal. Our global sourcing team is constantly looking for new and innovative products and to put into our stores. So please visit our website at www.heb.com/quest. But there's also another way, and as Madi just put up, May 31st, 4:59 p.m. And then also there's another way for you to join the HEB Beautiful team is to become a supplier. And our website is here, which is supplier.heb.com, which you, as you see in the red button below, there is a portal that you can submit all of your information. We encourage you to make sure that you put in that you are a small business owner, minority owned, veteran owned, women owned, business owner that will be captured in that portal. And then from there, you should begin to hear from us. Give it most people have been reaching out to me, and I thank you for this platform because we've gotten an overwhelming response in our supplier portal. And I'm trying to keep up with all the emails. Give us a couple of weeks when you submit, you will get back an email that shows you have a new identifier number. But because of COVID and we're all working remotely, please give us an opportunity to get that information out. Madi, Juanita, my Maestro Center, thank you so much for all that you do in the community and providing this platform for information for small business owners. Thank you so much.
No, Crystal, thank you. I have already seen a new product on the shelf. We know we all ran out of toilet paper. That was like a value of a bar of gold. And then I saw a new product. So thank you very much, HEB, for thinking outside the box and reacting so quickly. But again, thank you so much to Deidre Patello. Your wealth of knowledge, the opportunity to be able to come in and provide the information, the links, and to put, vision into what TWC is doing and so many other resources. The Maestro Center, the Maestro Entrepreneur Center having the foresight again to be able to continue these webinars and bring much needed resources and information that otherwise we may not have known. But the community, our listeners, those who are participating, the one thing that I am going to challenge, and this is going to be my call to action, is share the information. Be able to speak to it, be able to share it, think outside the box. As an entrepreneur, you have the passion and the opportunity to start a new business. Now go back, extend that hand, and bring someone else along with you, just as HEB has extended a hand to bring us along with them. Thank you, HEB, BBVA, Wells Fargo, VIA, and all of our supporters, all of our chambers who have the passion, the drive to be able to, get us through this and not alone. Never alone, always collaborative, and always, thinking about how can we have someone else's back. Thank you, Madi. And we look forward to next week's webinar. And what about next webinars, ma'am?
So next week, we're going to be talking about managing your funds in the new normal. So leveraging your financial resources in the best way possible. And we're going to bring in a professional CPA, as I mentioned. He's volunteering his time, so we're really thankful for that. And they're going to be providing afterwards consultations if you need to have access to that as well. So please stay tuned. You know where to find us. It's every Wednesday at 11 a.m. For English session and 1 p.m. for Spanish session. So we're looking forward to having your participation for next week. So thank you, Deidre. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you for all of your participation. See you next week.
And I believe for those who are Spanish speakers, we are going to be moving straight into the Spanish version.
Yes, that's right. Bienvenidos todos a Webinar Wednesday. Esta es nuestra 8ª semana y estamos súper emocionados de poder estar aquí con ustedes hoy para poder platicarles cómo definimos la nueva normalidad, cómo se ve tu negocio, qué va a pasar en el futuro, ahorita con la empresa pequeña y los negocios ya abriendo, ¿cómo definimos eso? ¿Cuál va a ser la nueva normalidad? Y entonces hoy estamos aquí para poder compartir con ustedes esta información y quisiera introducir a nuestra moderator, Juanita Sepúlveda. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y nos va a introducir a la persona que nos va a estar dando esta información el día de hoy.
Gracias Maris. Siempre es una oportunidad para poder comunicar con todos los que están presentes. Webinar Wednesdays es una oportunidad para poder informar y centrar todos los recursos que puedan tomar oportunidad las empresas. Claro que sí, definimos el nuevo normal, cómo se ve mi negocio, perdón, más agua. Tenemos la oportunidad a poder introducir a Jaime Martínez. Él va a poder presentar la información en español que presentó DJ Patello, porque es importante reconocer qué podemos hacer en este tiempo. Jaime, por favor, ¿estás muted? ¿Estás muted, Jaime? Gracias. Por favor, dilos de la manera que podemos avanzar y qué recursos hay para poder protegerlos y entender lo que está sucediendo en ahora. Pero Mari, gracias. Dime lo que estamos haciendo hoy, porque el 1 de mayo comenzamos una oportunidad para empresas aquí en San Antonio para poder crecer local.
Sí, el 1 de mayo lanzamos nuestro sitio web, que es una página web donde tú vas a poder encontrar recursos completamente gratis. Es una fase que hemos lanzado, la primera fase. La segunda fase va a traer aún más recursos, pero los invito a que se registren su negocio, porque van a poder tener acceso a nuevas oportunidades, van a poder comunicarse directamente con otros empresarios, crear más oportunidades para tu negocio, pero sobre todo tener los recursos completamente gratis y accesibles para tu negocio. Por ejemplo, todos estos seminarios están listados en ese sitio web donde tú puedes ir y accesar todas estas sesiones que han sido grabadas para que tú puedas regresar con más calma y poder utilizar los recursos de la mejor manera posible. Así que aquí les dejo el desenlace en maestrocenter.org. Ahí se pueden registrar. La página web está completamente en español también, así que no hay ningún problema, solo le tienen que cambiar la opción para poder ver toda la información en español. Así que muchísimas gracias por participar y por registrarse. Y ahora quería agradecer a todas las personas que han estado apoyándonos en estos webinars. Gracias a HEB por ser un key sponsor en estos webinars. Sin la ayuda de HEB no podríamos estar presentando esta información para ustedes, así que muchísimas gracias. Gracias a BBVA, Wells Fargo y VIA también por patrocinarnos, pero gracias también a esas organizaciones que nos ayudan a traerte esta información a ti. Todas las cámaras de comercio en San Antonio, pero también los SBDCs, y gracias a Jaime, que Jaime es parte de Small Business Development Center de UTSA en San Antonio, así que muchísimas gracias por estar aquí con nosotros para compartir esta información a nuestros empresarios. Así que
vamos a avanzar, Jaime.
Perfecto, bueno, muchas gracias a ustedes, a Mari y Juanita, por invitarnos el día de hoy y gracias por invitarme a mí y sí, para ser ponente de esta presentación para cómo podemos apoyar y darle toda la información que, pues, claro que tenemos acceso y que estamos al tanto de, sí, de la información y que necesitan los empresarios pequeños y medianos aquí de San Antonio, Texas. ¿Y qué información les falta? Bueno, esperamos que hoy les podemos dar esa información y claro, no vamos a poder responder y darles toda la información que existe y para poder seguir avanzando y recuperar de este pandémico del coronavirus que hemos tenido. y cómo se le ha afectado a sus empresas durante este tiempo. Bueno, otra vez me llamo Jaime Martínez, soy el director de este programa del UTSA, SBDC, COVID, acelerador de recuperación empresaria. Somos un acelerador de negocios entre un programa que se llama, bueno, decimos por sus siglos en inglés, SBDC, el Centro para Apoyar a Pequeñas y Medianas Empresas aquí en San Antonio, Texas. ¿Qué es lo que hacemos? ¿Qué es un SBDC? Somos fundados por la Administración de Pequeñas Empresas, el Small Business Administration. Ya casi vamos a cumplir 40 años en operación y apoyando a pequeñas y medianas empresas aquí en San Antonio, Texas. Bueno, y nosotros somos el matriz, ¿verdad? Y pueden ver en nuestro logotipo ahí en el medio, en la parte de azul. Nosotros cubrimos, somos el matriz de 10 diferentes centros, de 10 centros de SBDCs en el sur de Texas, que es parte que incluye San Marcos, Austin, Corpus Christi, Laredo, El Valle, El Paso, por ejemplo. Y que lo que cubre la área son 79 condados que nuestros centros cubre en el sur de Texas. O sea, es una gran área que apoyamos a nuestros clientes y más para la asesoría de los servicios que ofrecemos, la asesoría de las pequeñas y medianas empresas, acceso a la información, investigación de mercados, el desarrollo de planes de negocios, plan financiera, y si existe apoyos. Bueno, en estos tiempos es de las pocas ocasiones por este desastre, este pandémico que hemos tenido, donde sí existe apoyos económicos. Apoyos económicos, dice, dinero sin tener que regresarlo o pagarlo, una deuda, por ejemplo. Y es en donde yo hoy, su servidor Jaime Martínez, que le voy a explicar esa información entre mi presentación. Somos parte de la Universidad de Texas aquí en San Antonio, ¿ok? De lo que es nuestra red de Small Business Development Centers, o sea, centros para apoyo para pequeñas y medianas empresas. Somos una red muy grande también en que estamos en todos los Estados Unidos. Tenemos más de 1,100 centros en todos los Estados Unidos y todos colaborando. Y nuestras oficinas somos parte de diferentes universidades en todos de los Estados Unidos o colegios de la comunidad. Por ejemplo, estamos aquí en la Universidad de Texas, San Antonio, pero también tenemos en Laredo, que es la Universidad de Texas A&M, o sea, el TAMU, que se dice como se dice en inglés. Todos trabajamos de parte de nosotros. Yo soy empleado del estado de Texas, igual como Deidra, también recibiendo fondos para también operar este programa del Small Business Administration. Y ofrecemos nuestros servicios sin costo. ¿Ok? Porque viene de los impuestos que ustedes pagan al gobierno y a nivel estatal. Ahí está ahí mero abajo, nuestro teléfono, nuestros datos de contacto. Nos pueden enviar un correo electrónico y también visitar nuestro sitio web. Okay. Ahora, no sé, Mari o Juanita, si me pueden dar por fuera acceso. Oh, bueno. Aquí van a... Ok, perfecto, gracias. Aquí están... bueno, el sitio web, lo que voy a en un momento navegar en pasar por los diferentes sitios que tenemos, por toda la información de los fondos, dónde existen fondos para poder seguir contratando a gente, siguiendo operar obtener un poco de alivio para seguir operando entre sus negocios de parte del Small Business Administration o solicitando un préstamo con su banco. También todos los recursos que están disponibles para los dueños de empresas. Claro, yo creo que ustedes son dueños de sus propias empresas. Y también ya en cuando ya van a poder regresar a sus oficinas o tiendas en ese tiempo. Cómo pueden entrar sus empleados y ayudarles sin tener ningún peligro entre sus oficinas y tiendas, etcétera, entre sus negocios. Ahora les voy a presentar un poco más información en más detalle, que toda información que está incluido en nuestro sitio web. Okay. Juanita,
Gracias.
¿sí puedes ver mi pantalla?
Sí, la estoy viendo. Gracias.
Okay, perfecto, gracias. Ok, muy bien. Como les comenté, el nombre de nuestra aceleradora de negocios se llama el Business Recovery Accelerator, que nosotros apenas fuimos fundados, abrimos para poder ofrecer nuestros servicios a nuestros clientes el día 15 de abril. O sea, apenas tenemos un mes de enfocándonos a las pequeñas y medianas empresas que están afectados por el coronavirus. Y para las pequeñas y medianas empresas. Como les comenté, del tipo de servicios que le estamos ofreciendo a nuestros clientes es asesorándolos entre el proceso, cómo solicitar los préstamos del Small Business Administration, el SBA, entre los dos diferentes préstamos uno se llama el Economic Injury Disaster Loan. O sea, ese préstamo económico del desastre se va a solicitar directamente con el Small Business Administration. Y el otro que se llama el Paycheck Protection Program, ese préstamo, el que le llamamos, por sus siglos en inglés, el PPP, el PPP. Ese préstamo también es un préstamo que apoyado por el Small Business Administration, pero ese préstamo se va a solicitar con su banco, donde ustedes tienen sus cuentas bancarias. En este tiempo donde sí hay dinero disponible para el programa del PPP, hay ciertos bancos en donde no han tenido una relación bancaria donde sí pueden ir y solicitar ese préstamo. En los primeros de abril y también los medianos de abril, en esos tiempos cuando los bancos estaban ofreciendo esos préstamos, solamente tenían que solicitar el préstamo con su propio banco. Ahora que el banco ya tiene más conocimiento cómo trabaja ese programa del Paycheck Protection Program, el PPP, como les he explicado. Ahora, depende del banco, le están ofreciendo que empresas pueden ir a solicitar ese préstamo sin tener una relación bancaria. Mande.
¿Podemos ir a ver dónde están esos recursos donde podemos hacer esas preguntas?
Correcto. En este momento voy a pasar a los programas del SBA.
Perfecto. Gracias, Jaime.
De nada. Bueno, como les comenté, uno de los programas del SBA se llama el Paycheck Protection Program. Okay. ¿Qué es lo que es ese préstamo? No sé si ustedes ya han solicitado ese préstamo y todavía están en espera o todavía no, por quizá falta de acceso a información, no han solicitado ese préstamo. Pero este préstamo, y por parte de nuestro sitio web, pueden hacerle clic en la parte donde dice el Paycheck Protection Program para poder obtener más información en más detalle del que lo que es el Paycheck Protection Program. Ese préstamo le da a ustedes, los dueños de sus propias empresas, los empresarios, para poder pagarles los salarios, los horarios a sus empleados. ¿Okay? Porque sí, claro, en estos tiempos no hay ventas o casi nada de ventas o poco ventas entre sus negocios, sus empresas. ¿Okay? Y claro, como les comenté, no hay ninguna venta porque no pueden operar, por ejemplo, como un restaurante. Quizás no están ofreciendo el servicio para llevar, o sea, para llevar comida a sus casas. Y si ustedes pueden dejar a clientes entrar a sus restaurantes, claro, por la ley a nivel estatal, más 25% de gente pueden entrar, o sea, los ocupantes pueden entrar a comer, pero son pocas ventas, o sea, no pueden cubrir los gastos, o sea, tienen más gastos de lo que tienen ventas en este momento. No hay muchas ganancias. Ajá.
Pero Jaime, lo que estoy notando ya he podido leer y me han explicado es, el préstamo PPP, 75% es para los salarios y para poder mantener sus empleos. 25% es para poder operar el negocio, ¿verdad? O las empresas. Pero también, y probablemente estoy equivocada, pero la pregunta es, ¿en qué manera podemos presentar o documentar que vamos a poder usar el 75% que estamos pagando a nuestros empleados para que puedan volver? ¿Qué hay?
Entendido. Como les iba a explicar, y gracias, Juanita, por esa pregunta. Este programa les ayuda a pagar los salarios a sus empleados. Uno de los beneficios que incluye uno de los apoyos que les ayuda, los beneficios de este programa, es que si ustedes mantienen esos salarios y reciben fondos de este programa por 2 meses, y son exactamente 8 semanas, el gobierno les van a perdonar 75%, ¿okay? De ese dinero. O sea, sin tener que pagar. Pero se tiene que mantener esa cantidad de salario por 8 semanas. ¿Okay? Pero ¿qué es lo que incluye entre esa cantidad que ustedes van a solicitar del SBA? Déjenme mostrarles. ¿Pueden ver el solicitud en mi pantalla, Juanita?
Sí, claro que sí.
Ok, muy bien. Este es el solicitud que les va a pedir su banco. Okay? Ese es el solicitud del Paycheck Protection Program. Okay? Si pueden ver aquí en esta caja, dice, ese es el promedio de salarios que le pagan a sus empleados. Okay? Es un promedio de mensual, que van a dividir a lo que es el promedio anual, y luego esa cantidad lo van a meter más 2.5%. Okay? Y luego van a obtener la cantidad, y lo final tienen que comprobar y mostrar al gobierno y al banco que esa cantidad va a cubrir tal cantidad de empleos. Okay. Esa es la solicitud que lo pueden bajar de la página web, del sitio web del Small Business Administration, pero claro, sus bancos les van a dar esta solicitud. O sea, no lo tienen que bajar, llenarlo y luego ir con el banco. Pero sí les recomiendo que primero revisen la información que les va a pedir esta solicitud, que les va a pedir el banco, porque lo que nos han comentado los diferentes bancos, las instituciones financieras aquí en San Antonio y mayor parte del estado de Texas, que un gran porcentaje de los empresarios que están llenando esa solicitud han tenido errores.
Okay.
Un gran porcentaje de las solicitudes han tenido errores en la información, y los grandes errores que han tenido puede ser algo muy sencillo de el nombre del negocio. Otra parte del porcentaje de los socios entra en un negocio. ¿Y qué es lo que quiere decir eso? Si ustedes tienen, si ustedes son dueño de una empresa de 20%, ustedes tienen que salir como entre el solicitud. Tienen que agregar su nombre y su información personal en el solicitud. Okay. La mayorista y también el minorista de la empresa tienen que salir como dueño entre esa solicitud. Otra pregunta. También otro error que nuestros clientes nos han preguntado a nosotros, también nos han comentado los bancos, otro error que han hecho los empresarios cuando están llenando esta solicitud, no han agregado el número de impuestos, que es el Tax ID Number. Ese es el número de impuestos que ustedes solicitaron, se registraron como empresa estatal, y bueno, aquí en San Antonio, Texas, por ejemplo, y esos son 9 dígitos que se tienen que agregar en esta solicitud. Un poco de información para darles el día de hoy. Gracias. Ok, darle seguimiento, lo que es el... Ok. Como les comenté, 75% de esos fondos que van a solicitar les van a perdonar el gobierno. ¿Qué es lo que son los otros 25%? Pueden también, de esos 100, 25% de esos fondos que van a recibir del banco, del Paycheck Protection Program, esos fondos se pueden usar para pagar la renta. Si ustedes son dueños o dueñas de su propio terreno, para pagar la hipoteca. Cualquier otro gasto del negocio, este dinero se puede utilizar. Okay. Bueno, ya que les platiqué en breve del uso de los fondos, cómo solicitar este programa del Triple P, cómo se debe de manejar, cómo se debe de usar esos fondos. Okay. Les recomiendo que cuando están gastando este dinero, gasto puede ser por pagar los salarios de los empleados, salarios no nomás los salarios, pero los impuestos que incluyen los salarios, cualquier otro gasto que incluye para pagar esos salarios se puede usar entre esos 75%. Pero les recomiendo, y fue recomendado a nosotros por contadores y especialistas en finanzas que nos han comentado, que quizás si reciben $50,000 o $10,000, que se viene depositando esos fondos a otra cuenta separada de la cuenta maestra que tienen para pagar los gastos de la operación entre negocio. ¿Por qué? Porque ya cuando llegan a casi la semana 6 o 7, ya se deben de estar preparando para presentarse al banco, para que recibirse con el banquero, para poder que ellos te van a perdonar los gastos, que verificar que estos gastos se utilizaron para pagar no más salarios o los otros gastos. O sea, tienen que comprobar, tienen que mostrar las copias del cheque que le pagaron para los empleados, las nóminas a los empleados.
Pero en eso, Jaime, vamos a decir que tenemos empleos listos. Ya estamos preparados para pagar los salarios, estamos preparados para comenzar el negocio.
Uh-huh.
Pero, por ejemplo, en este tiempo tenemos empleos que no van a poder volver. ¿Cómo podemos mantener esos documentos para asegurar que estamos entre lo que están pidiendo de las reglas para poder mantener el PPP, el préstamo de PPP?
Muy buen comentario, Juanita. Mira, sí, ya hemos tenido clientes que están muy mortificados porque Jaime recibí $50,000 y la cosa es mis empleados, hay cierto porcentaje que no quieren regresar porque primero piensan que hay peligro entre, no sé, entre la oficina o la tienda que ellos tienen, hotel, si son hoteleros, o ellos han decidido recibir el apoyo de desempleo,
Claro.
¿okay? El Texas Workforce Commission, o sea, el comisión de personal aquí en Texas, que le están pagando, porque sí, desocuparon los dueños de donde estaban trabajando y el estado de Texas le están pagando su beneficio, su apoyo. Hay veces que le están pagando un poco más de lo que iban a ganar en su salario, en su propio trabajo.
Claro.
Ese sí es un programa. Y como me comentó, en inglés, mi colega Deirdre Patillo, que hay ciertas preguntas que son claves, porque como les comenté, cuando el gobierno, los legisladores a nivel federal que nos dieron acceso a estos apoyos, a estos beneficios.
Claro.
También en nuestra página tenemos para llegar también a la página del Small Business Administration. Ellos tienen ellos mantienen que está muy actualizada las preguntas más frecuentes, las preguntas más que se les han hecho más al SBA para estar más claro en la ley, más claro en estos apoyos. Por ejemplo, como mi cliente y como me has comentado, Juanita, hay ya casi tiene una semana esta pregunta muy famosa.
No estoy viendo. Claro.
La pregunta número 40. Si ustedes recibieron cierta cantidad de dinero que viene incluido en calculación para pagar de los 4 empleados, pero 2 no quieren regresar con usted por cualquier razón, y ustedes han hecho todo posible para ofrecerle, o sea, su trabajo, su puesto, su posición, pero que ustedes tenían que desocupar a esa gente y no quieren regresar con usted. Ya llegaron a la semana 8, okay, la segunda mes para regresar con el banco para que le van a perdonar el dinero, los 75% de este programa. Tienen que documentar todo, mostrar al banco que ustedes han hecho todo posible para ofrecer esa posición a sus empleados. ¿Okay? ¿Qué es lo que les van a pedir? Muy bien. Puede ser puede imprimir un correo electrónico de su empleado que le respondieron que gracias, pero no, en este momento no quiero regresar a mi oficina, a mi, no sé, a mi tienda, porque no, hay peligros.
Pero Jaime, al principio, probablemente estoy equivocada, pero al principio mandamos nosotros la letra por correo, ¿verdad? Primero nosotros nos están diciéndolos que vuelvan, ofreciéndonos la oportunidad que vuelvan, y probablemente no los contesten con un correo, que los manden un correo, ¿verdad? pero probablemente nos mandan un texto o un correo electrónico, hasta a veces una llamada. Gracias por la oportunidad, por eso en este momento yo siento que hay más peligro. Nomás hacemos documentos o hacemos notas y ponemos la fecha y entregamos en los documentos con nosotros para poder presentar.
Sí, sí, todo tiene que estar muy documentado porque hay veces, bueno, en tu ejemplo, Juanita, sí, si su empleado va a regresar su llamada por teléfono, alguien más tiene que estar allí escuchando la llamada. ¿Ok? Porque tiene que ser la palabra, hay algo documentado, la fecha, la hora, quién fue, qué le han ofrecido de salario, cuándo van a regresar, el día de regreso que deben estar en la oficina. La hora que deben regresar a la oficina, todo tiene que estar muy bien documentado. Esta pregunta número 40, la pregunta más que les han hecho al Small Business Administration y también al Departamento de Tesorería, al gobierno, les van a también poder perdonar esos, no sé, los otros $1,000 que tienen que pagar. Porque la cosa es ya en cuando, si no van al banco, si van al banco y no tienen toda esa documentación, sin ese ejemplo, si todos los 4 empleados regresan a mi ejemplo, pero si no regresan con el banco para perdonar ese préstamo y no traen la documentación, bueno, sí, van a tener que pagar ese préstamo. La buena cosa es, no tiene que ser un pago por 6 meses, no hay un pago que tienen que hacer por 6 meses. Ya después de esos 6 meses, la tasa de interés es 1%, pero la cosa es, el plazo no es flexible, es a 2 años. Y es la cosa. Esos son los detalles de la programa del Triple P, pero lo que me gustó mucho, un comentario que hizo a los primeros participantes en la presentación, que fue en inglés. Esta es una oportunidad que le están dando el gobierno donde no existe. Yo sé que es el dinero de ustedes por los impuestos que han pagado, pero tómalo como una oportunidad. Que hagan todo posible para poder que le van a perdonar ese dinero también. Eso es uno de las programas que le están dando en este momento el Small Business Administration. Y yo les recomiendo que sigan revisando todas estas preguntas más preguntados, que les han hecho al SBA para aclarar todo. Lo malo es que no están en español. Y es por esa razón que que mi programa existe, porque no nomás yo, pero tenemos otros asesores que sí hablan español. Les pueden aclarar cualquier duda o pregunta que tengan. Ok, regresando a... Ok. Muy bien.
Estaba notando, porque dijo Deidre que había aquí con el Family First Coronavirus Response Act, que ponieron algo importante para cubrir la familia.
Sí, y de parte de todos estos apoyos que le están ofreciendo y los beneficios que le están ofreciendo el gobierno, no nomás a los empresarios, pero también a los empleados, que va a proteger a los empleados entre la empresa y que ustedes como dueños deben de tomar en cuenta, obedecer estas nuevas reglas, leyes que están que han en esta nueva acta, que deben de tomar en cuenta muy bien. Y como le comentó Juanita, el Family First Coronavirus Response Act. Esta es una acta legislativa que apenas salió en los primeros de abril. Claro. Que cubre es más como un beneficio a los empleados. Pero Juanita, más para hacer una pregunta, no sé, hasta en este momento tenemos unas preguntas que debemos de responder. No quiero seguir
Bueno,
avanzando, sino...
no, pero la cosa es, como dices tú, una cosa que está haciendo el TWC es, está viendo la necesidad, pero no nomás por cubrir una empresa, pero también la familia, como dice aquí, the paid sick leave act para trabajadores o los empleos y también como para la empresa. So, Mari, tenemos una pregunta.
Sí,
Claro.
tenemos una pregunta que ya me la han hecho varias veces. Jaime, esta misma oportunidad y todo lo que has mencionado también es para empresas que van iniciando.
No. Buen comentario, Mari. Ustedes ya debían de estar operando antes del 15 de febrero. ¿Ok? Ya debían de estar ya iniciando operaciones antes de esa fecha. ¿Por qué? Bueno, esa es la fecha que decidieron a nivel federal para poder ofrecer estos apoyos, estos beneficios.
Pero el SBDC sí tiene otros programas para asistir a las empresas que van empezando, ¿correcto?
Claro que sí. Hoy nos estamos enfocando a las empresas que sí que están afectados por el coronavirus en este momento. Correcto. Pero sí tenemos otros servicios, claro. Nuestra asesoría, o sea, no hay falta. Ayuda en desarrollar un plan de negocios, un estudio de mercado, con más conocimiento al perfil de su cliente, también tomando en cuenta la competencia en su área, en su ciudad, asistencia en desarrollar una plan financiera y proyecciones financieras, o sea, proformas. Les podemos apoyar entre todo eso. Cómo contratar con el gobierno, más ayuda y apoyo con recursos humanos, cómo contratar a gente, cuáles salarios, cuál horario le damos a pagar a estos empleados. Eso sí es información gratuita que nosotros ofrecemos en nuestro programa. Sí, es lo que es diario, algo normal que ofrecemos a todos empresarios.
Y es gratis.
Y
Lo quería
gratis.
mencionar.
Sí. Jaime, podemos saber lo que están ofreciendo ahorita TWC, porque como dijo Deidre, una cosa que estamos notando es que hay oportunidad para recibir beneficios porque no estamos trabajando, ¿verdad? Y hay oportunidad a uno que sea una empresa que puede apoyar a sus empleos. Si nos pueden notar esa información, por favor.
Sí, muy bien. Y también en nuestra página que está debajo de Employee Resources, o sea, recursos para empresarios. Y luego
Porque noté
aquí
que
está
hay
el comisión de personal aquí en el estado de Texas, Texas Workforce Commissions. También les ayuda a ustedes como empresarios el tipo de información que les deben dar a sus empleados que tenían que desocupar en sus empresas. Perdón, ¿tienes un comentario?
Sí, pero la forma que quiero que notas, si vuelves a la otra página, por favor, donde dice Employers Work Refusal Documentation.
Muy bien. Ok, sí. Ok. Sí.
Porque, por ejemplo, estamos ahorita comenzando, todavía siguen poniendo aplicación para beneficios, ¿verdad? Pero lo que están notando TWC es que parece que 4 o 5 diferentes tipos de información que puede entrar para poder asegurar que la empresa puede soportar su empleo por el COVID-19, ¿verdad?
Sí, correcto. Sí, como les estamos platicando y explicando en el caso, si los empleados no quieren regresar a su trabajo, el posición que les han ofrecido, les pueden, bueno, pueden reportar y deben de reportar el rechazo de la oferta de empleo. ¿Ok? Ah, el, el, el el TWC sí, es claro para ofrecer beneficios a sus empleados, pero también para proteger, también para proteger el empresario también. ¿Ok? Y aquí está el documento que pueden llenar, ¿ok? En el sitio web del Texas Workforce Commission. Y la buena cosa es lo que yo y Diego estamos platicando anoche, que es otro recurso, si se puede decir como recurso, para que en cuando ustedes regresan con el banco para que les van a perdonar este préstamo, les pueden mostrar que ya han llenado este documento, ¿ok? Con el Texas Workforce Commission. Y hay puedes decir que hay dos lados, hay dos beneficios del Texas Workforce Commission, el tipo de ayuda y apoyo. Protege a los empresarios y también puede proteger a los empleados trabajando en sus propias empresas. Okay. Y como pueden leer desde mi pantalla, la información es es la razón, la fecha que les han ofrecido su posición, ¿okay? Y cuando ya han hecho todo posible y sí rechazaron la oferta, puede llenar esta forma en electrónica.
¿Nos puedes empezar para ver la razón que te han en este momento, donde dice reason for refusal? Ay, eso es lo que quería saber.
Sí, o sea, como comentan, hay peligros. Sí les afectó el virus. O sea, sí están enfermos en este momento. Tienen un familiar que fue afectado por el virus. Y quizás ustedes, ese empleado están cuidando a ese familiar. Y bueno, como todos nosotros que tenemos hijos en escuelas, cancelaron el escuela. Y no regresamos, esperamos que podamos regresar en los finales de, mediados o finales de agosto. Y hay una variedad de razones por cuál fue el rechazo de ese empleado. Buen comentario, Juanita. Sí. Ajá.
Porque estaba notando, porque ya ves, cada caso es diferente. Sí. Cada necesidad es diferente. Y estaban, como dijo Deidre, la oportunidad que está presentando ahorita TWC es poder ver y avanzar de una manera que no nomás soporta, como dices, las empresas, pero también los empleos para poder reunir y avanzar. So, me gustó lo que estaban notando y la manera que estaban avanzando para poder soportar a la comunidad. En este momento, hay unas preguntas de los que están presentes. Mari.
No tenemos preguntas todavía, pero si quieren ir escribiéndonos sus preguntas, las estaremos aceptando.
Claro que sí. Y si quieren recibir esta información, Mari, ¿cómo se pueden comunicar contigo?
Sí, si quieren recibir la grabación de este webinar, envíenme un correo a mari@maestrocenter.org. Se lo voy a escribir en el chat para que lo tengan disponible y si quieren acceso a esta presentación, por favor envíenme un correo y con muchísimo gusto se las envío.
Jaime, gracias para presentar la información en español para poder avanzar y entender más. Es difícil cuando uno no practica cada día, ¿verdad?
Sí, sí, es muy difícil y hay mucha más información.
Claro.
El reembolso de impuestos, el reembolso de otros gastos que les puede hacer a nivel federal, que también nosotros podemos ayudar entre todos esos pasos.
Claro.
Está incluido, entendido. Y hay mucha confusión y como comentó mi colega Diedra, que le recomendamos que también consigue la ayuda de un contador. Okay, para todos estos reembolsos y gastos que van a tener entre estos tiempos. Yo sé que sí es otro gasto, pero es un gasto vital entre el negocio.
Y de hecho, la próxima semana vamos a tener a un contador certificado a platicarles a ustedes sobre cómo manejar esos recursos, pero también ellos van a ofrecer sesiones luego, después de la charla, para que ustedes se puedan comunicar con ellos directamente si tienen alguna pregunta un poco más sensible, que no la quieren hacer en el chat. Ellos van a estar disponibles para poder ayudarles con eso también.
Mari, parece que alguien está pidiendo a alguien. ¿Hay una pregunta? ¿Si notas, por favor?
Preguntan, yo tengo una oficina en Provo, UT. ¿Ella la puede incluir? No sé si entiendo esa pregunta. No sé si Jaime entiende la pregunta.
A ver, déjame ver. Yo tengo una oficina en Provo, Utah. Ok, ¿ella la puedo incluir? A ver. Sí. Bueno, si usted, señor Cárdenas, si usted tiene una oficina en Provo, Utah, la puedo incluir. O sea, bueno, depende. Bueno, los gastos de esa oficina en el préstamo del Paycheck Protection Program, sí. Si usted tiene empleados entre esa oficina, puede solicitar el préstamo del Paycheck Protection Program. Si tiene un empleado o 2, 3, 4, sí, claro, pero tiene que documentar muy bien los salarios y todo. Pero sí se puede incluir en oficina. Ajá. Esperamos que sí le respondemos o entendimos muy bien su pregunta.
Claro. Bueno, Mari, antes que
Tiene
yo...
dos empleados, dice que tiene 2 empleados. Acaba
Muy
de
bien.
contestar que tiene 2 empleados y que tiene la oficina.
Sí, señor Cárdenas, yo le recomiendo lo más pronto posible que tiene contacto con su banco y que ya obtiene, pues, como cada banco es un poco diferente, cómo solicitar ese préstamo, pero le recomiendo contactar al banco lo más pronto posible para poder solicitar ese préstamo. En este momento no sé cuántos miles de millones de dólares todavía están disponibles por el fondo del Triple P, pero entre un día a otro se puede ya terminar esos fondos.
Gracias, Jaime. Como siempre, es una oportunidad para poder presentar información a los que están presentados y la oportunidad a poder reunir todos los recursos que podemos para poder analizar todas las empresas. Pero Mari, dime de una persona que puede presentarnos información. ¿Dónde está esta señora?
Ahorita la vamos a presentar, Crystal Royal. Si Jaime puedes quitar tu pantalla, ahorita voy a poner la mía para poder presentarle. Un segundito. Ahí está. Queremos presentarles a Crystal Royal con HEB. Ella no habla español, pero yo voy a traducirle su presentación. Crystal,
no entiende.
do you want to say hi?
Hello,
Ahí está. Hoy voy a presentarles de cómo pueden participar y cómo pueden ser parte de HEB. HEB ahora más que nunca quiere hacer negocios contigo. Así que, por favor, si quieren ser parte de HEB, participen en el Quest for Texas Best. Aquí está el desenlace para que puedas aplicar directamente. Y ellos han extendido la fecha para poder aplicar hasta el 31 de mayo a las 4:59 p.m. no a las 5, sino que a las 4:59:59. Así que si ustedes tienen un producto, sé que habían unas preguntas sobre esto en el público. Así que si ustedes tienen un producto o un servicio que creen ustedes que fuera bueno tenerlo adentro de HEB y poder tener shelf space o poder tener una ventanilla para poder tener tu producto ahí, esta es la manera de cómo aplicar. Entonces, ya les presenté el desenlace, metan su aplicación en este desenlace que ven en la pantalla, www.heb.com/quest. Y ahora, y también si usted quiere ser un proveedor para HEB, si usted tiene algún producto que pueda que HEB utilice para sus empleados, para sus tiendas, etcétera, aquí les dejo la página web con el desenlace que es el supplier.heb.com. Así que hay dos maneras de poder aplicar a HEB. La primera es el Quest, que es una aplicación que se cierra el 31 de mayo. Y esta supplier está abierta por todo el año. Así que yo les recomiendo que si en verdad quieren ser parte de HEB, que se metan a las dos páginas web. Y antes de seguir, quisiera agradecer a Jaime una vez más y a DJ por poder participar en este webinar, por proveernos esta valiosa información. Y voy a regresar a su sitio web. Aquí tienen la información que necesitan. Si ustedes quieren más información sobre lo que acabamos de presentar y si necesitan más ayuda, por favor, no duden en contactarlos. Jaime y DJ están dispuestos a ayudarles en lo que ellos puedan y sé que tienen un equipo muy fuerte y profesionales que están dispuestos y listos para ayudarles en lo que necesiten. Así que aquí les dejo la información y antes de terminar, quisiera otra vez enfatizar lo del lanzamiento de nuestro sitio web. Por favor, vayan a registrar su negocio. Esta va a ser una oportunidad como nunca antes lo han visto. Es como un social media, como decir Facebook, pero específicamente para negocios. Ustedes van a poder tener la oportunidad de crear oportunidades de negocio para tu negocio utilizando este sitio web. Así que si no te has registrado, por favor, ve y regístrate cuanto antes. Y antes que terminemos, quisiera agradecer a Juanita, gracias por todo su apoyo, por siempre estar dispuesta a ayudarnos. También a Jaime, a TJ, gracias. Y gracias sobre todo a Crystal y a HEB por todo el apoyo. Siempre están dispuestos a ayudarnos y sin su ayuda y sin su apoyo, estas sesiones no fueran posibles. Pero también quisiera agradecer a BBVA, a Wells Fargo y a VIA por darnos su apoyo financieramente, pero también a todas las otras organizaciones que nos ayudan a compartir esta información y que sus miembros son parte de nuestras sesiones. Así que muchísimas gracias a todas las cámaras de comercio, a los SBDC en Houston y a SBDC en San Antonio. Muchísimas gracias a todos y les recuerdo que el próximo miércoles vamos a tener a los contadores disponibles para contestar a sus preguntas. Así que los esperamos en el mismo canal y a la misma hora. Creo que tenemos una pregunta más.
¿Quieren recibir ¿No quieren recibir la información de Cristal para poder comunicarse con ella?
Yo se lo envío a Celine. Yo le envío el correo electrónico luego. Así que muchísimas gracias a todos. Muchas gracias por participar y los esperamos la próxima semana. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Bye.
Bye.